Welcome boys and girls, Costin here with my Tzeentch unit tier list for Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. Tzeentch is definitely a race that has cavalry, flying units, ranged demonic units, but it is really, as with other demonic races, the infantry that is going to be the focus of the army roster. As well as, of course, using the magic that your lords and heroes do provide. So with the Tzeentch army, it's kind of the goal for you to get the enemy engaged, ideally blubbed up, and then blow them up using magic. So starting with Marauders of Tzeentch, I'm going to put Marauders of Tzeentch in really F tier. The reason is, like with other Marauders of the Monogods, these units were designed for Champions of Chaos, and they don't really have as much of a use as they do for the Warriors of Chaos because of the Warband upgrade system. For what it is worth, if you lack anything to recruit, Marauders of Tzeentch aren't the worst units in the world, but there's many better alternative, especially when you think about the fact that in Tzeentchian campaigns, in Kairos' campaign, and the Changeling campaign, you can get access to much better units very, very quickly, and as a result of it, it's just kind of not worth it. In fact, you might be benefiting quite a bit from recruiting regular blue horrors than you would Marauders of Tzeentch, just getting that a bit of range power over there. Then we have Tangors. So Tangors, A tier unit, available relatively early on. I would have considered them at one point an S tier unit, but they were nerfed a bit, and nowadays they're durable infantry units, but not the most durable infantry units. They'll get the job done, don't get me wrong on that subject, but there are better choices even available at the same tier as Tangors. For what is worth, durability, they can hold up throughout the course of an entire campaign, and they are definitely the best of the monogod gore units. Axe and shield, good durability, good combat versatility, just outclassed by Forsaken of Tzeentch in every single way. And it's kind of funny when you think about the fact that Forsaken of Tzeentch were really the first Forsaken units to be introduced with the launch of the game. If I got it right, I mean, they were in the initial trailer. So with respect to Forsaken of Tzeentch, high durability, decent level of damage dealing capability of early game availability, and they will defeat pretty much any other infantry unit that you will encounter when you can recruit them. Really, like an entire army of Forsaken of Tzeentch will get the job done in a way few other units early on can that you have access to Tzeentch. Of course, later on you will want to replace them, but again, like with Tangors, and even more so I would say for Forsaken, they are a unit that you can use again throughout the course of a campaign. They do lack the versatility against elite units. They don't have anti-large, they lack the high-end damage to deal with endgame infantry units, but they're still a really good unit for Tzeentch to use early on in their campaign. It's like Forsaken of Slaanesh and Forsaken of Tzeentch are the two Forsaken units that are definitely worth investing in, worth getting, and throughout the course of the relevant portion of the campaign, they're going to be your principal infantry unit that you should use. Then we have Chaos Warriors of Tzeentch, so we have Sword and Shield, and then we have Halberds. We do lack a great weapon version, and I do find it weird that Creative Assembly decided to go down that path. But all the same, high level of durability, because Tzeentch does have barrier for their units. So high level of durability, and you do have an anti-large benefit with the Halberd version and a bit of armor piercing, though not as much as you would realistically need against endgame infantry units, but still, Chaos Warriors are phenomenally good units that can pretty much hold their own against any infantry unit in the game. They won't win, for the record, against some of the elite units. Like, I wouldn't want to take these guys against Sargard with great weapons, as an example. But outside that kind of circumstance, you're not gonna suffer from having cast warriors. It's just really a shame that Tzeentch again lacks a great weapon version or a really good high-end infantry unit that has a lot of armor piercing. I mean, halberds have it, but not enough. Then we have Chosen of Tzeentch, just upgraded version of cast warriors, more durability, more damage, just better combat stats in general. Some of the most durable infantry units in the game compared to, say you can think about Nurgle as a comparison, though they don't have the same damage dealing capability as the Khorne units have. That's kind of one of the reasons Khorne wins out, I would say, with regards to cast warriors and Chosen. It's not just because of the durability, but because they do more damage than the other variants. Like Slaanesh has speed, and Hell Scourges. Nurgle and Tzeentch have durability, and Khorne just has flat-out damage. And I would say that flat-out damage kind of ends up winning out of those combinations. Then we have, Blue Horrors, yeah, an F-tier unit. Like, this is the thing about Tzeentch. You don't really have units that you want to recruit early on. Thankfully, it's very easy in both a Changeling and a Kairos campaign to get to tier 2 and get access to those units. But yeah, Blue Horrors, F-tier unit, you only recruit them if you have literally nothing else to recruit. So just honestly, the very first few turns of your campaign. But outside of that, it's just not worth it to consider these guys in any way, shape, or form. Same with Pink Horrors. Again, it is a range capability and can be useful, but they're low durability, limited range, demonic units. So they have all the downsides that come with demonic units, and they don't have even the upsides that you could think about with Bloodletters or Plague Bearers, or certainly not the upsides you have with Demonettes. And with Exalted version, right? It's a bit better of a unit, but again, limited use situation. Like the baseline infantry unit, demonic infantry units of Tzeentch are not worth using. There's an argument to be had about Plague Bearers and Bloodletters. And certainly Demonettes can be useful for Slaanesh specifically, not for Warriors of Chaos. But for Tzeentch, these horror units, just again, not really worth talking about. Cast Chariots of Tzeentch, they're okay as a chariot unit. I'll put them in C tier. I think they can be used sometimes. I mean, they're not bad units. That's the thing. Like, it's just really the situation that, again, there's better units available. But you have a high durability chariot unit that has all of the benefits that you'd want from a chariot unit. Higher durability, good charge bonus, good combat capability, and because there's few entities per unit, few models per unit, you don't have the same pathfinding issues as you would encounter with plenty of other chariot units in the game. Like, that's the reason I don't care much for snarling pump wagons, because they get stuck in and you will get certain models of that unit unable to get out. Then we have Marauder Horsemen of Tzeentch, limited case use of a unit, so you have a skirmisher range unit with decent level of durability. And the benefit of these guys is that, as I've talked about in the other videos, is that if you're looking to detach a portion of the enemy army to have them pursue you, then these guys can be useful. Just throw a couple of javelins and then get out of there. Of course, if the enemy has plenty of range units, that becomes a bit of a problem, but just attack a flank of an army. Outside of that, in terms of combat ability, not that great, but they do have that useful case scenario for them in a battle situation, I would dare say. Then we have Centaurs. I'm gonna say Centaurs are not great units. They're like Cav units, basically, and they take a lot of damage. They don't have the durability. They don't do enough damage to justify actually getting them throughout the course of a campaign, from my personal perspective, as it were. Like, if you're going to use a cavalry unit, there's really good options at Tzeentch, but these guys are not it. Next up, we have Chaos Knights of Tzeentch. Pretty solid unit. Yeah, the icon over here doesn't match the game icon, weirdly enough. But anyway, so Chaos Knights of Tzeentch. Chaos Knights in general are pretty good heavy cavalry, though without the kind of bells and whistles that you would have from other cavalry. And the thing is, they're great units, high durability, but I vastly prefer Cast Knights with Lances. So Cast Knights with Lances of Tzeentch, not as good as the Corn version, or the Slashy version, like Devastating Flanker is ridiculous, or play Arbol and get Devastating Flanker and the Corn benefits in combat. But Chaos Knights with Lances, amazingly good shock cavalry, probably one of the best in the entire game. And they're quite capable of decimating the vast majority of opponents you would encounter. Like, just charge them in behind enemy line once your own line has engaged and watch them melt. And that is really the benefit, as it were, for Cast Knights with Lances compared to regular Cast Knights. But regular Cast Knights will still get the job done. Then we have Doom Knights of Tzeentch. So Doom Knights of Tzeentch, in terms of pure combat capability, I would even rank them as an S tier unit. But tier requirements, recruitment situation do make them less appealing, as it were. But still, flying cavalry is something that gives you a lot of flexibility on the battlefield, or flying. I don't know what you would want to consider these guys, really. I wouldn't really consider them cavalry. Maybe kind of like some equivalent of flying monstrous infantry, I guess, is the best way of putting them. But these guys are quite capable of dealing with pretty much anything in their path. And what they can't deal with, they can just run away because they can fly. They can hit the enemy backline. They can deal with artillery. They can deal with, again, the vast majority of things. They have that flexibility on the battlefield. Cavalry can be limited dependent on the battlefield, and especially in sieges, whereas Doom Knights do not have those limitations. Then we have Chaos Furies of Tzeentch, like with Marauders, and even less so actually than with Marauders. I would say like Chaos Furies, just in general, are not really worth it as units for either Warriors of Chaos or any of the mono gods that have them available. The only reason you ever recruit this unit is, again, you literally have nothing else to recruit. That's the case for all F tier units. But outside of that, the moment you get anything else to recruit, on the ground or in the air, you do so. You could argue that they're more durable than other Furies. I would argue, personally, that if you want a flying unit, then you have... then you have the availability of Screamers of Tzeentch. So Screamers of Tzeentch, S tier unit, readily enough available, or more available than other units, and give you a certain flexibility on the battlefield that is lacking. They're not so elite that they're unrecruitable, really, in a campaign. And they will, and in general, flying units have a significant combat capability that is useful in both sieges and in field battles. Sure, if you're dealing with pure melee armies of your opponents, not necessarily as useful. But if you're dealing with ranged units, if you're dealing with sieges, where the enemy has ranged units on the walls or behind the walls, then Screamers of Tzeentch are an incredible, useful unit to recruit during the course of your campaign. And that's the value proposition right there with Screamers of Tzeentch. Just that flying capability, decent level of durability, decent level of damage, make them pretty worthwhile to get during the course of a campaign. Next up, we have Flamers of Tzeentch and Exalted Flamer of Tzeentch. I'm going to put these guys in B tier. Not a horrible unit, far from it. Can do a good amount of damage, but think of the playstyle that Tzeentch has, right? If you're playing in a Tzeentchian campaigns, chances are you're probably going to want to get Sangors, Forsaken, Chaos Warriors, all that. For dwarves, having flamethrowers is incredibly useful because dwarves inherently have ranged units. You look at thunders, you look at quarrelers, you look at the artillery, and dwarves have the kind of army that one of the better playstyles to have in a campaign is playing more defensively. Sure, you can make an entire dwarf army melee or full-on melee stacks as the dwarves, and it works. But if you do so, you don't necessarily want flamethrowers. And again, you have this problem with flamethrowers on the ground. Sometimes they do a lot, but other times they won't fire. So that can be quite a bit of an issue in a lot of battles, especially again if you have these big massive melee brawls, and as Tzeentch you definitely will do so. Like if Tzeentch could have a full-on range playstyle, these guys would be much higher tier. But as it currently stands, I just don't think flamers are worth it. Burning Chariot of Tzeentch, pretty solid chariot unit, flying, all the capability that you would want from a unit single entity. Can be incredibly useful. Annoying requirements in terms of recruitment situation. No, I wouldn't say it's necessarily exceptional as a unit, but all the same, still a very, very good, solid choice of a unit. Just not quite on the same level of A tier and S tier. I would say just B tier. Units in B tier, by the way, are not terrible. It's just like they have some issues that prevent them from being there. Then we have Change Bringers. Oh yes. I'm not even going to discuss this one. This is an S tier unit if there's ever been an S tier unit. So yes, recruitment requirements are annoying and all that, but let me say it like this. You have flying flamethrowers that are incredibly good. Like, it's one thing for dwarves to have brimstone guns, right, on their gyrocopters. They have some issues, but Change Breakers just basically annihilate everything in their path. And in general, Tzeentch Flamers can do that, but it's just that issue with pathfinding, line of sight, etc. Well, by being flying, you remove all of those issues. So you have all of the upsides and none of the downsides, except they're a target for ranged units. But all the same, if you're playing Tzeentch and you get these guys annihilate armies. Like, it's not even a discussion. Like, it's one of those few cases where I would say an elite unit is definitely an elite unit. Again, tier requirements and all that kind of stuff, but all the same. Then we have Spawn of Tzeentch. I mean, I'm going to give it a couple of points for the fact that it is a Tzeentchian unit, so it's, it's got that inherent durability. But all the same, Spawn are just not incredibly exciting. They're more useful if you just care about, if you get Spawn units as Warriors of Chaos and you want to go down a specific path for a god. But for Tzeentch, just not really exciting. Not the worst Spawn unit, and certainly not redundant, as is the case for other mono gods, but still not incredible as a unit either. Then we have the Cockatrice. So I'm going to put the Cockatrice in B tier. And I would say that with regards to the Cockatrice, it's an okay flying unit. It's not necessarily exceptional. I'm going to argue that. I know some people really like it, and I was generally happy with it early on, but nowadays it's kind of a bit of a fluff unit. It does give you that flying capability that you would benefit from in quite a few battles, but the thing is, so the Screamers, and generally I would say Screamers can end up being a bit more useful on the battlefield. But the Cockatrice is an okay unit for what it's worth. It's kind of a shame that a lot of your damage dealer, or all your damage dealing capability, comes from demonic units, because you do have the downside of demonic units. This creates a campaign issue for Tzeentch, definitely, where if you want to keep your momentum going in a campaign, one of the things you want to do is fight battles where you take as few casualties as possible. Beyond the fact that individual battles are going to be faster and easier, and you're going to win against your opponent in a far better fashion if you take fewer casualties because balance of power. But the problem this creates for Tzeentch is that means you just recruit Chaos Warriors, so battles end up being as fun as a brick. Let's put it like that. Because with Khorne, you have incredible damage dealing capability on your infantry. With the other ones, they'll win the battle. They'll win it with minimal casualties, but it's as boring as watching paint dry. In fact, I'd say watching paint dry is more interesting. Chaos Shrine of Tzeentch, if you want the buff, sure, sometimes. I would not argue in favor of shrines in general, but that's kind of where I stand on the subject of shrines. Yes, they can offer some buffs, but do they matter? Are they worth taking a unit slot? I wouldn't say so. Soul Grinders of Tzeentch, not great Soul Grinders. If you want a big single entity, you have big single entities, by the way, as Tzeentch. Much better ones, I would add. And with Soul Grinders, you either have the situation where Nurgle and Khorne are useful. Incredibly so for Nurgle. But for Tzeentch, it's kind of like, whatever. I would dare say in terms of that. Then we have the Mutalisk. And this is the big single entity for Tzeentch. Like, the animation quality on this unit is phenomenal, but its combat capability is insane. The reason I'm not ranking it higher is that even though it is an incredibly useful unit for a big single entity on the ground, it's very durable, it does a lot of damage, it destroys a lot of things, but again, you have that recruitment situation for these kind of units that is a downside for them. And then finally, the Exalted Demon of Tzeentch. Yeah, I'm just going to put this in B tier as well. It's not as good as a Keeper of Secrets, right? But the bird, as it were, is definitely better than a Bloodthirster, definitely better than a Grey Unclean one. Is it something that you necessarily want to get in your army? I mean, it is useful. I'm not going to say it's useless. Is that, again, tier requirements? Combat capability is pretty okay, right? They're definitely worth recruiting. Unlike, say, you can go an entire Khorne campaign and not give a damn about Bloodthirsters and not miss their absence whatsoever. Whereas with Tzeentch, you will benefit from having these. Just in general, the single entities that Tzeentch has are pretty useful. But one of the big downsides I would say that does exist in Tzeentch campaigns is like a lot of the cool stuff, it's higher tier, and you're literally playing a race that can get spam Forsaken and Sangors and decimate everything in your path, let alone the bullshit that the Changeling does in his campaign where he has nothing at risk. So yeah, that is the downside with Tzeentch, not a great race to play right now, but all the same, there are cool things over here, but let me be blunt. In a campaign, practically speaking, there's 4 units you give a shit about really recruiting, or the 4 principal units, and everything else is kind of fluff. Those are Forsaken, Sangors, Chaos Warriors, and Chaos Warriors with Halberds. Everything else, you don't really need to when you're a campaign. But it is worth talking about, like, which units are actually worth recruiting if you get to the tier, and you get the building slots and all that. It's kind of terrible, especially for the fact that when you look at a Changeling, you have limited cult supplies, so you can only get so many barracks or so many buildings, and you're probably going to benefit more from getting economic buildings or diplomacy buildings, like using those cult supplies on certain things or increasing hero capacity. Whereas with Kairos, you need the economic building, and then you need the economic modifier building to make that economy work. So yeah, Tzeentch does leave a lot to be desired in terms of campaign playstyle, because what that leads to, even in a Kairos campaign, is limited building slots, so limited options. And then again, hero capacity focus in a campaign as well. That's all I had to say. Costin signing out.